Welcome to Action Network's coverage of the 2023 Women's World Cup presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Today, we'll be previewing the United States women's national team, spotlighting their odds to win their third straight World Cup, and discussing whether other teams have closed the gap and really maybe even passed the U.S. women's team as we head into this World Cup, which starts this week down under. Before we get started, remember, we are once again thankful for our sponsors, Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. You can sign up with promo code ACTION to get Bet365 exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, Virginia, and Iowa. Bet $1 and get $200 in bet credits. Terms and conditions may apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. I'm Anthony DeBundo. We're joined by BJ Cunningham, who you've probably heard many times on the Wonder Goal podcast. And we have a special guest to help us preview not just the U.S. women's national team, but this entire tournament. She's going to be with us for most of the tournament. Anna Whitty, who is an NWSL broadcaster, former college soccer player at Penn State, and U.S. women's national team expert. Anna, thanks for being here. We're all in agreement, which is kind of shocking. And as Americans, of course, we want to root on our Americans, but when we put on our objective hats, we have differing opinions about the fate of the United States. Anna, why aren't you betting the U.S. women's national team to win the World Cup? And what exactly is the reasoning for going against the Americans in Australia?
The U.S. women's national team has fought for other federations to be just as good and maybe even better as them down the line. And that's where we are heading into the 2023 World Cup. A lot of federations have poured in a ton of money. They're bringing in players who have a higher skill level. They're able to play at the World Cup. So the U.S. women's national team has a lot of competition. It's something they asked for, and it's a good thing for the growth of the game at a global level. I say that the U.S. women's national team will have a very hard time winning this World Cup, and likely not winning it is because they don't have the depth in certain positions due to certain injuries. Mal Swanson back in the spring was a massive loss due to injury. They brought in Alyssa Thompson, who doesn't have the experience as an 18-year-old. She's got one gear and one gear only, and she hasn't figured out how to use that quite yet. On top of, Alyssa Thompson coming in, Rose Lavelle has been dealing with some injuries. Megan Rapinoe has injuries. And then Julie Ertz, who's only played in 7 games in the past 2 years at a professional high level, is dealing with injuries as well. On the back line, there's some inconsistency, some younger players. The U.S. women's national team will easily make it out of the group stage, but I think when it comes to the round of 16 and beyond, there's going to be some really good, tough competition that the national team hasn't had maybe the experience and the results of late if they want to make it and be the champions at the very end.
Now, BJ, there is some pressure on this U.S. women's national team because the results since winning the last World Cup have not really lived up to the standard. They came in third at the Olympics, lost in the semifinals there. They've had some inconsistent results in friendlies in the last calendar year. BJ, why aren't you targeting the U.S. women, and what are your main concerns heading into this tournament?
Well, I think it's something Anna brought up, is that the talent level across the world has gotten better over the last 4 years. And something we keep saying is that the rest of the world has not only catching up to the United States, but they've caught up. You look at teams like England, like Germany, like Spain, even some teams down the board, like a France, like in Australia. These women are playing in some of the best leagues in the world, whether it be the Women's Super League, Germany, the NWSL, to the point where the United States isn't just completely leaps and bounds better than all these other teams. Now, as it pertains to this World Cup, the United States has been handed a pretty favorable draw. So they rightfully are the favorites given the draw they have. They're going to likely play Italy in the round of 16, and then they're going to face probably Norway or Japan in the quarterfinals, and then potentially Spain or Sweden in the semis. But if you look at some of their results, obviously in 2023, they've won every single match. But if you go back to last fall, they played 4 matches, 2 against Germany, 1 against Spain, and 1 against England. They lost to England, they lost to Spain, and they split with Germany. That's quite concerning if you're somebody who's just coming in. 3 of the best teams in the world, the United States could only manage 1 win out of those 2. And then if you go back to that Olympics, Sweden beat them pretty badly, 3-0 in the group stage. They needed penalties to get by the Netherlands, and then eventually obviously lost to Canada in the semifinals. This is obviously, as Anna has touched on, this is a different squad than you saw at the 2019 World Cup. A lot of younger players are being put into the fold. But again, the rest of the world is incredibly talented, and there's a lot of teams here that can really dethrone the United States and from being 3-time World Cup champions.
Yeah, the biggest argument for the United States in this World Cup for me is clearly the path. I mean, of all the big teams, of all the top 5 to 6 contenders in terms of true talent, the United States clearly has the most favorable path because they don't get paired up with any of the other top tier teams until a potential semifinal if they're able to win their group. And what we think happens in the other groups will happen. So the Japan finishes second, like you mentioned, a potential Japan-Norway quarterfinal. They would be on the opposite side of the draw if England, Germany, and France all win their group. All 3 get shipped to the other side, and they wouldn't play them until the final. So that's certainly the best argument for the United States women's national team. But I have my own doubts about them tactically because there have been real questions about Vlatko Andonovski and how much he's developed them in terms of a creative side. Like a lot of what they have done successfully is just being more talented, faster on the wings, more dribbling capability, and kind of winning by sheer talent. You haven't seen a ton of the combinations and the final third tactics that maybe some have asked for. Now, it could be nitpicking, and I think there's a real possibility that maybe we are a little too harsh on Vlatko, but he hasn't shown it to me at this level, and he hasn't shown it to me, you know, in the one big tournament they played, the Olympics, where they often looked pretty lost in possession. So I think there's real doubts about what this team is right now. And I think that just sheer talent alone is not going to do it anymore. So we're all in agreement that we're not picking the United States. Anna, who is your World Cup pick? You're allowed to make 2. We'll give you 2, but okay. Who are your picks?
I just want to finish your thought real quickly about Vlatko Andonovski, because we have to remember he's been the man in charge for this U.S. women's national team for 4 years. He's had 4 years to swing people in and out of camps, figure out what partnerships he likes, what players he likes. Being able to evaluate players for that long is a luxury at the national team level. And this is a do or die for Vlatko Andonovski. Like, the expectation is to win always for the US, but especially because he's held this role for so long. So we will say that I definitely agree with you on Vlatko. He's got a lot on his shoulders this World Cup. My first pick to potentially win this World Cup, if the United States does not, is England. Now, it's because they won the Euros back in 2022. They are missing Beth Mead and Leah Williamson, who are massive players in the Euros. But once they won the Euros, the level of WSL, the Women's Super League in England, has risen so high. The talent, the amount of money they're putting into the league, the fans coming out and supporting them has risen the level for the players as well. So I see England going off of what they did in 2022. They have players still like Lucy Bronze, Rachel Daly, who's shown up in the NWSL and went back to WSL after winning the Euros last summer. And then they have Chloe Kelly, who's had 9 assists last season with Manchester City. There's so many players, not only who have had success at the club level, but they played a lot of international games together. They have great partnerships. I say England is potentially a runner. And then my second one is Spain. Despite everything that's happened off the field, they've had players come back into the fold and still want to play with this Spanish national team during the World Cup. Now, Alexia Putellas has been in and out of training with her national team gearing up to the World Cup. I saw there were reports that where she left training after 30 minutes, but she's still been training. They say that's all planned. I think Spain is going to have a lot of firepower based off of what's happened off the field with their coach. They're going to use that as momentum. They're definitely going to leave that off the pitch and bring a really nice brand of soccer that we've seen them play for years. And Alexia is a player who's been playing now since April. She has plenty of games underneath her belt. She's experienced. And I think if Spain wants to win, Putellas is going to have to be in the fold for sure.
All right. So my pick is France. Allez les Bleus. Hervé Renard comes in, replaces Corinne Diacre, who the players basically forced out because they were not too fond of her. And I'm going with the French because I think it's a really interesting combination. And based on the market price, 13-1 on the French, I don't know that they're that much worse than, say, Germany or Spain or even England. France has gone toe-to-toe with the top teams in the world for this entire last 4 years. I know that they came up short in the World Cup semifinals, losing to the United States, or quarterfinals rather, losing to the United States. But that match was very even. You go back and watch it, how it played out. Very even contest. And you can even go into their European loss. Again, losing a bunch of coin flip matches doesn't really make me think any less of them as a team. And I think with Le Sommer coming back into the fold, Renard, we've seen his tactical flexibility and his success on the international level on the men's side. It seems that he's gotten buy-in. They have a ton of talent, one of the most stout defensive teams in the world as well. Underlying numbers have been impressive for the last year, and they've only gotten better since Renard came in. So I'm buying this French team. I think they're right up there with those top contenders, but they're not being priced that way. And so at 13-1, their path could be tricky if they get like an Australia in the quarterfinals. It's essentially a road game, but they avoid that England-Germany quarter, which I really don't want any part of. So I'm going with France as my pick to win the World Cup. BJ, I know we are in agreement on France, but who else are you looking at to potentially win in lieu of the Americans?
Well, first off, Anthony, yes, I'm in agreement with France, but there's a famous saying, because Hervé Renard spent quite a lot of time in Africa managing international teams, won the Africa Cup of Nations with both Zambia and the Ivory Coast. The people of Africa say, do not doubt the power of Hervé Renard's white collared shirt. He's only got one shirt, but it's incredibly lucky. My favorite pick is going to be a little bit down the board. Sweden at 20-1. You know, we just mentioned them when we were talking about the United States, beat the United States 3-0 in the group stage at the Olympics, and it has a path that is pretty favorable to get to the semifinals as opposed to a team like England or a Germany. Sweden's going to play the second place group in Group E, which is the United States group, which most likely will be Portugal or the Netherlands, a team that they would be favored over. And then they're going to play Spain, most likely in the quarterfinals. And we all know the off the field stuff that's been happening with Spain. And we've seen it time and time again at these tournaments that if teams don't gel and they really don't like the manager, there is a possibility that they could falter. And Spain is also a team that is not that great when they don't have the ball. So Sweden, who's a team that's very, very vertical, direct counterattacking style team that has incredibly talented players like Rolfo, who plays for Barcelona in Spain, was a 0.99 XG plus expected assists. Wing back, she'll be asked to play a more advanced role up on the left side. Blackstenius, who's a striker for Arsenal, had a great season, 13 goals between the Women's Super League and the Champions League. There's a lot of talent throughout this Swedish team. And again, the path is pretty decent for them to get to the semifinals and have a rematch with the United States, who they've already beaten 3-0. And the lead up to this World Cup, they've had some pretty encouraging results too. They drew with Spain. They beat France. They did lose 4-0 to Australia and then drew Norway as well, 3-3. But they have a very, very favorable group with Italy, Argentina, and South Africa, a group they probably should win. And then they'll get a good round of 16 draw. So Sweden at 20-1, a team that's ranked third in the FIFA rankings that has a ton of talent. I really like that price for them to win the World Cup.
Yeah, so all in agreement on, not the United States winning the World Cup, but some differing opinions. England and Spain and France and Sweden, all teams that have been in the mix over the years, but have not quite, climbed the ultimate ladder, could have a first-time champion for sure at this World Cup. Be sure to tune in to our other videos where we preview some golden boot tickets and some, U.S. women's national team group stage as we get ready for the FIFA World Cup, the Women's World Cup, which gets underway on Thursday. Thanks to Anna and BJ for joining me. And thanks again to our sponsor, Bet365.